Hello there, you're watching the Press Preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror's Associate Editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail's Whitehall Editor, Claire Ellicott. Welcome to both of you.
Evening.
So, front pages then, let us start with the Financial Times, suggesting that falling inflation is likely to give some relief to Rishi Sunak's government and could pave the way for interest rate cuts this summer. The I2 says the country is on track for rate cuts in the summer. The Daily Mail says the drop in inflation proves that the economy is turning a corner at last. The Express, meanwhile, claims exclusively that a commitment to retain the pensions triple lock will be included in the Conservative manifesto at the next election. More defeats for the government's Rwanda migrants deportation bill in the House of Lords tonight is the top story for The Times. The Metro reporting on the conviction of a man who used opioids to fatally poison a couple whose business he wanted to steal. The Mirror speaks to the husband of legendary Coronation Street actress Julie Goodyear about her worsening dementia. The Telegraph has been hearing from the Work and Pension Secretary, Mel Stride, who says the so-called mental health culture has gone too far and that everyday anxiety should not be regarded as a medical condition. And the Daily Star reports on the discovery of a huge gold nugget by a man with a metal detector in Shropshire. Apparently he found it very quickly, though, didn't he? Anyway, a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. So let's head to our guests then, Kevin Maguire and Claire Ellicott. Lots of economy in the papers, including the Daily Mail, that's got an at last after the mortgage hope as economy turns a corner. And Kevin, this is what the Chancellor and Rishi Sunak would like to claim, of course.
Yeah, they've been claiming it so long, it's such a big corner. It must be bigger than a Hyde Park corner and the pace of a snail getting around it. But nevertheless, inflation coming down at 3.4%. 4% was good news. Next month, I think it's when the energy price increase comes out and the cap. So it could be down to 2, which would be the target. It was 11.1% in October 22, and the government is pinning its hopes on people feeling better off. The 2 national insurance cuts, trying to get some growth in the economy. Interest rates may come down in the summer, but the problem with that is people coming off fixed mortgages will still be paying a lot more than they were before, so they may not feel better off. So it's kind of good news, but will it save them? I suspect not.
Yeah, there was a bit of cutting by lenders, of course, today, wasn't it? And it was down slightly more than predicted, which was 3.5%,
yep.
Fractionally more.
Yep.
But
you're still hit when it was 11.1%. You know, that's a permanent hit.
Yes.
You know, people lost that. Your prices are still going up. It's just they're not going up at the same rate. Yes. It's not as if people are wading through a land of milk and honey.
Yeah, we always need to remember that, you're right. Yeah. The will it save them question, and is this the only thing they can, pin their hopes on? We'll come to Rwanda perhaps as part of this discussion in a moment, but is this the main thing they could hope for, do you think, ahead of a general election?
Well, Rishi Sunak, he's a former Chancellor. He wants to stake everything on the economy. But the facts are that things are getting better. They look good, and yet there's no real relief for the Tories in the polls. The polls haven't really shifted after either of the budget decisions to cut national insurance. And the trouble with falling inflation is, as Kevin says, this is great news, but it's going to take so long to filter down for people to feel better. And they've had such a hard time of it that it's hard to see how it really helps the Tories in the short term. Now, if we have an election in the autumn, as increasingly seems likely, perhaps things may feel better then. But you've got problems with frozen income thresholds. People are still paying a lot of tax. People don't feel very well off, and I doubt that it's going to help the Tories anytime soon.
And there's that question of public services, state of the NHS, criminal justice system, potholes in roads, wherever you look. It isn't a great picture.
Yes, and the Daily Mail, as other papers do, points out that the bank is expected to hold interest rates at 5.25% tomorrow when they make a decision, today for the papers. But the markets believe the rate will start to fall this summer. People will be asking why. It's coming down, why? And the point is that the inflation target is 2%, and it has been for so many years.
Yeah, so it's still, quite some way over it.
But they expect to, I think, hit about 2% next month.
Yeah, which would be good.
Yeah. Obviously, you've got loads of global volatility, so Ukraine flares up again. If there's another hit to energy prices, that could affect inflation again. But it's going in the right direction. It's just whether it's quite intangible for voters to understand what inflation is. They just know that they feel worse off. So.
Yeah. Is this also the case? The government wouldn't take any responsibility for inflation going up, but of course a lot of it was Putin and Ukraine, undeniably so. And one of the ways of bringing it down now, once all didn't want blame for it going up, wants credit for it coming down, is because of course interest rates have gone up. They've taken money out of the economy. We went into recession. And so retailers have had to cut their prices. So you get skinned, they got skinned by inflation, or now you get skinned by interest rates.
Yes, and the Eye talks about, again, interest rate cuts after inflation fall come the summer, put it on the wait and hope bit. But food inflation has been fascinating, not least because of Ukraine that you mentioned, grain markets around the world, but also the weather in Europe. That impacts fruit and veg rates as well, doesn't it? And there's no suggestion that won't happen again for us. So
and
food inflation pressures by...
Brexit.
But
it has fallen sharply. I think it was at 19.5% at some point. Now it's down to about 5%. And a lot of that, the reason food was costing so much was because of transport, because the costs of transport were so high, and refrigeration, everything else. And if that price starts coming down, that's obviously hugely affected the overall price, and things will seem better.
But then again, when you go into shops, prices aren't falling. By and large, they're going to stay where they were, or just go up a little bit slower than they were. So you're not better off.
The FT also leading on this. As you perhaps might expect, inflation's falling to 3.4%, keeps summer rate cuts on track. Everybody's got a similar message, do they not? The rise in consumer prices for the year to February was below the 3.5% predicted by economists, and January's 4% rate as well. So it's, it is moving in the right direction.
They also have Rachel Reeves Labour's attack. And their focus, which is prices still high, tax burden highest been in 70 years, and mortgage payments are going up, which they are if you're coming off a fixed and you're going on, the new rate, which can burn a big hole in your pocket.
As someone who's remortgaging at the moment.
I mean, has this come at the right time, do you think, for Rishi Sunak, appearing before the 1922 committee, after the pressure, who knows from how many Tory MPs about his leadership, do you think? Is this allowed him to reset in front of that backbench committee meeting in a more positive light? Well,
most of his 5 pledges that he offered up to the voters for them to judge him on were economic, and halving inflation was one of them, and obviously he's more than done that. So he can really point to this as a really good thing that he's done. The trouble is, as I've said before, it's quite intangible for voters. It's how they feel. It's how wealthy they feel, not what the inflation's doing, and not what everything else is doing. There was a really positive reception for him at the 1922 committee tonight, and I was outside listening to the banging on the desks, and plenty of Tory MPs coming out.
I never went to a school like that. but the louder the bang, the worse it is for him, because it's orchestrated by the whips and the few people who like him.
Well, they'd all had their Weetabix. There was a lot of banging on the tables. Everyone's very positive. But I think one of the main reasons for that is they're now just about to break up for a 3-week recess.
Well, absolutely.
And not going to be forced to do any votes anytime soon, because they've delayed Rwanda until after Easter.
Yes, this is the lead for the Times. The Times, isn't it? Once again, the House of Lords has thrown out the Rwanda bill. But instead of it ping-ponging straight back into the House of Commons, the government has decided to prioritise the May local elections, early May, and has told, effectively, Tory MPs to go forth and persuade people, presumably, yes?
Apply voters.
I didn't quite know where I was going with that.
From 1 to 2, or they're going to get a hammering, aren't they? We all, they know they're going to get a hammering. But it's very, given this, it was one of his 5 pledges. I mean, inflation was only one of the 5 you can say he hit. But this is a flagship policy, and it's interesting because I think it's the scale of those votes against in the House of Lords. The majorities are between 30 and 55, despite the fact they were resurrecting dead Tory peers and bringing them in to vote to try and overturn Labour, Lib Dems, the crossbenchers, and some of their own, because James Cleverly, the Home Secretary, talks about Labour and their allies. Well, Ken Clarke, now Lord Clarke, was leading the charge on the Tory benches, over areas such as ignoring national and international law, or threatening to deport to Rwanda on one-way tickets people who fought with the British armed forces in places like Afghanistan. I think that's just too much for some Tories.
So
Well,
obviously the Tories argue there are safe and legal routes for anyone who has worked for the
Yeah.
UK. So
Thank you for balancing that out. I heard about
giving the government
But you don't mean it, do you? You just say that's what they say, which I think is quite right to give their explanation.
Yeah. In the meantime, Daily Express has word, they say, on what might be in the Tory manifesto, this idea that the pension triple lock will be in the Tory manifesto. The Express always knows its readers, clearly.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is expensive, this promise, is it not? When some might say there are other priorities.
hugely, but you know, if you're the Tories, you're trying to shore up your vote. The people who vote for you are pensioners, and these are the people that, you know, they're your lifeblood. They're the ones you need to get out to vote for you. And actually, you know, a lot of the briefing around what will happen in the next election, there is a lot of concerns that there's just a lot of apathy out there. People don't feel the need to go out and vote, and there's not much enthusiasm for Starmer. There's very little enthusiasm from the Tory party, for the Tory party, as we can see in the polls. And you have to give people a reason to vote for you. So even pensioners who always vote Tory,
Well,
this is a great thing for them.
That's a generalisation, to be fair.
Yeah,
but it's true.
they are the only demographic at the moment who are, you know, those people who are nearer the coffin and the cradle are the only people who are giving the Tories a majority. Everybody else there's Labour majorities. And what I can't understand is how they got themselves into a mess over Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, saying to Piers, it's under review. That it might not have been in the manifesto when Starmer has said it will be in the Labour manifesto. It's almost everything they do, they just do a bit bodged.
Yeah.
They sometimes get there in the end. But
When is it true that the Labour manifesto is ready and the Conservative manifesto is a work in progress? Is that
Labour are in a pretty good shape.
state.
It doesn't mean that what would have been a May manifesto will be a manifesto in October or November. I'm going for November.
Well, we'd love to. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
We'd love to see what's in the Labour manifesto, because I'm not sure. What policies have they got left now?
I think you'll find it's not going to be particularly detailed. I'm a thematic.
On that
be
note, we'll take a
great,
short break, I think, probably, won't we? Anyway, lots more still to come in the next part of our programme. Another day, another royal story, the latest on how the Princess of Wales's hospital records may have been improperly accessed by staff. That is the investigation and allegation, at least. Back with that and more after this. So welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me once again, Kevin Maguire and Claire Ellicott. Welcome back to both of you. Claire, the Kate story, not making the front pages like it has recently, but certainly a number of newspapers, including the Metro, putting a number on those who are now being investigated in terms of this alleged attempt to access her medical records.
Yeah, I mean, this is a shocking story. Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales, went in for surgery, abdominal surgery. That's all we know. Obviously, everyone's fascinated. They signed her off from work from her, her duties until Easter. But, speculation's been rife about where she is. We've had the controversy over the doctored photograph. And now this. There's 3 workers who are said to have tried to access her medical records.
Allegedly.
And they're under investigation. It's at the London clinic, which is, I think, where she's always had the Royals always have their operations. And the thing about it is, obviously, we all are desperate to know, but this is quite serious. You just don't think this should be happening in hospitals. And, she's obviously gone through something. Yeah, she said, I think there's been briefings from the palace that she intends to speak more about what's happened and what she's been through, partly because there's been such huge speculation about where she is.
Partly when she meets members of the public, it might come out like that.
Suggestion
but the point being,
when
there's privacy, which some people call secrecy, there's a value on the information, and that's what we've started to see.
Those who are accused of doing this may have just been nosy.
Yeah.
They may not wanted to gossip to their friends, but not put it in the wider public domain. But anyway, there are just incredibly strict and correct rules against doing this, and it's a criminal offence. And it's quite right, whether you're a cleaner or a bus driver or you're a future queen, your medical information should not be accessed by others who are not authorised to do that. But for this clinic, and my colleague Russell Myers, the Mirror's royal editor, broke this story. It was on the front of this morning's paper and widely followed up. Yeah, it's kind of... We knew there was at least one under suspicion, but we thought there was more, which, using the term staff. But this London clinic is so expensive, exclusive. It's a disaster for them, an absolute disaster, because they will have people who particularly value their privacy and secrecy, and they will now worry, has this happened before? But it could be that the hospital has a warning system. If somebody tries to access it, it flags up, lights, bells ring, and so you know immediately, and they don't actually get the information. That we don't know yet, whether the information was actually obtained or whether it was an attempt to get it.
Yes, and certainly the hospital stressed all its protocols and the reasons for its protocols today in its statement, did it not? Let's move on to the Daily Telegraph. Mental health culture has gone too far, says Stride. This is Mel Stride, whose effective job in government has been to try and get people back to work, hasn't it? And one of the main reasons they're not back to work is because of mental health issues and the inability to access care for whatever it might be.
Mel Stride, who's the Work and Pensions Secretary of State, his main job, as you say, is to get people back to work. I think when I realised that the biggest spending department in government wasn't, in fact, health, which I think a lot of people assume, it's actually the welfare. It's actually his department, the welfare state. And billions and billions and billions of pounds go through this, and it's a real priority for Rishi Sunak's government to try to get everyone back to work. At the moment, there's quite low unemployment, but as the economy starts to get better, there are fears that that may grow. And Mel Stride has come up with a series of sort of interventions to try to get people back to work. This is the latest. He's given an interview to the Daily Telegraph saying that mental health culture has gone too far. He thinks people can just go to the doctors, they get signed off work, they get benefits for it, they don't have to go to work, and this system needs to stop. And he's saying that I think 150,000 people are signed off work with mild conditions, and he wants to help them look for a job. The welfare bill's going to hit 100
Just 30 seconds left.
But by far the biggest component of his department spending is the state pension.
Yeah.
But I value resilience and people kind of getting on with it, as it were. And if you can work, go to work. So it is. I'm not going to dismiss exactly what he's saying, but I think instead of shouting at people, pull yourself together, get better, whatever, I think you somehow need to understand why they are the way they are, what the pressures they're feeling, and sort of cajole, coach, counsel, whatever it requires back to work. Because some people are resilient, some people are not.
Yeah.
And you've got to help those who are not.
Yeah, and some would say in the NHS, for example.
Well, yeah.
The resilience has been hard to suffer because they're so under the cosh, aren't they? But we've run out of time. So much more we could say. Luckily, you're back at the 11. Thank you very much indeed.